I'm Jamal, a mechanic who scraped every penny for my dream home until my brother stole it for a luxury car. My parents backed him up, but the real betrayal hit when I uncovered the racist lie behind it all. My name's Jamal Carter, a 30-year-old mechanic from Ohio, and I've been fixing cars since I was 16. I learned the trade from my uncle, who had a tiny shop on the edge of town where I'd spend summers tightening bolts and changing oil while other kids played basketball. Now, I work at Rodriguez Auto, a small garage where the fluorescent lights buzz too loud and the smell of gasoline clings to my clothes. Every late night under a hood, every grease-stained uniform, every skipped meal, it was all for one dream, a house of my own. Nothing fancy, just a two-bedroom where I could hang a porch swing, maybe fix up a car in the driveway without a landlord breathing down my neck. I'd saved $50,000 0 cents over 10 years. Every dollar tucked into a savings account I guarded like a hawk. I'd check the balance every night before bed, watching the numbers grow, feeling a little closer to my dream with each deposit. My family knew how much that house meant to me. My mom, a part-time seamstress who'd stitch dresses late into the night, would smile and say, "Jamal, you're the steady one. We're so proud of you." My dad, a retired factory worker who'd spent 30 years on the assembly line before a back injury sidelined him, would nod from his recliner, his voice rough but kind. "You'll have that house soon, son. Keep at it." And my younger brother Malik, 25, always had this charming grin that could light up a room. "You're the big brother I look up to," he'd say, his eyes bright, his words warm. I believed them. I trusted them. That was my first mistake. Malik had always been the golden child, even when we were kids. He was the one who could talk his way out of anything, skipping school, crashing Dad's old Chevy, even getting caught sneaking out. Mom and Dad would just shake their heads and say, "He's got a bright future, that boy." Meanwhile, I was the one fixing the Chevy, staying late to finish my homework, making sure the bills got paid when Dad's disability checks ran I didn't mind back then. I thought that's what big brothers did. But over the years I started to see the pattern. Malik's charm made them blind to his failures, while my hard work was just expected. When he dropped out of college after one semester, they said he needed time to find himself. When I worked double shifts to cover his unpaid tuition fees, they barely said thank you. It was a chilly Thursday evening in October when I pulled into my parents' driveway after a 14-hour shift. My beat-up pickup truck rattled as I parked, the engine wheezing like it was begging for a break. I was bone-tired, my hands still smudged with grease, dreaming of the leftover stew Mom always saved for me. But then I saw it, a gleaming silver BMW, brand new, parked like a trophy in the spot where I usually left my truck. The streetlight caught its polished curves, making it look out of place against the peeling paint of my parents' house. Malik was leaning against it, his designer jacket catching the light, a smug smile stretching across his face. "What do you think, bro?" he called out, patting the hood like it was a prize he'd won. "Isn't she a beauty?" I stepped out of my truck, my work boots crunching on the gravel, my stomach already sinking like a stone. Malik had been job hopping for years, barista 1 month, delivery driver the next, nothing sticking for more than a few months. He couldn't afford this car, not even close. "Malik, where'd you get the money for that?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing, a cold dread creeping up my spine. He tossed his head back, laughing like I'd said something hilarious. "Relax, man. Mom and Dad helped me out. It's all good." My parents stepped out onto the porch, their faces lit up with pride like they were watching their son accept an award. Mom, wrapped in her favorite cardigan, clapped her hands together, her smile wide. "Doesn't he look successful, Jamal? He needed this for his new job interviews." Dad nodded, his arms crossed, his eyes shining. "It's an investment in his future, son. You'll understand one day." I felt the ground tilt beneath me, like the world had flipped upside down. "New job interviews?" I repeated, my voice hollow, the words barely making it past the lump in my throat. "What job? And what money?" My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone, fumbling to open my banking app. The screen lit up and the notification hit me like a punch to the gut. $127.43. That was all that remained of my $50.00 house fund. My vision blurred, my breath catching as I scrolled through the overdraft alerts. $10.00 withdrawn on Tuesday. Another $20.00 on Wednesday. And the rest gone by this morning. 10 years of sacrifice, erased in 48 hours. "Malik," I said, my voice shaking now, my hands gripping the phone so tight I thought it might crack. "Did you take my money?" He shrugged, not even looking at me, still running his hand along the BMW's hood like it was the only thing that mattered. "It was a family account, right? Mom and Dad said it was fine. You can save again, Jamal, you're good at that." My parents didn't flinch. Mom stepped forward, her voice soft but firm, the same tone she used when I was a kid, and she wanted me to stop asking questions. "Jamal, don't overreact. Malik needed this more. You've always been the strong one." I couldn't breathe, my chest tight with a mix of shock and betrayal. The strong one, the responsible one, the one who'd carried this family on my back for years, who'd given up so much so they could have a little more, and now, the one whose dream they'd shattered without a second thought. I looked at my family, their smiles cutting into me like knives, their pride in Malik a betrayal deeper than I could fathom. Then I glanced at my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, watching from her porch across the street. She gave me a small, sad nod, her eyes heavy with something I couldn't name? Pity, maybe? Or a warning. That nod planted a seed of doubt in my chest, a whisper that this betrayal ran deeper than I could see. I couldn't focus at the garage the next day, my hands fumbling as I tried to loosen a bolt, the wrench slipping and scraping my knuckles raw. My boss, Mr. Rodriguez, noticed right away, his voice cutting through the haze in my mind. "Jamal, you okay, man?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag, his eyes narrowing with concern. I shook my head, the weight of last night pressing down on me, making every movement feel heavy. "Family stuff," I muttered, but the words felt empty, like they couldn't possibly hold the depth of my pain. How could I explain that my own brother had stolen my future, and my parents had stood there cheering him on like I didn't matter? All day I kept replaying the moment I saw that BMW, Malik's smug grin, my parents' proud smiles. I'd trusted them, believed they saw my hard work, my sacrifices. But now I wondered if they'd ever really seen me at all, or if I'd just been the one they could always count on to take the fall. The thought made my stomach twist with a new kind of hurt, a shame I hadn't felt before, like I'd been a fool for thinking they'd ever put me first. That evening, my parents insisted on hosting a family dinner to celebrate Malik's new car. I didn't want to go. Every instinct told me to stay away, but I needed answers, needed to look them in the eye and understand why they'd chosen him over me. The dining room smelled of Mom's pot roast, but the air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin crawl. Malik sat at the head of the table, still in that designer jacket, showing off pictures of his BMW to our cousins, who nodded and smiled like he was some kind of celebrity. "You should have seen the salesman's face when I rolled up in style," he bragged, his voice loud and arrogant, his eyes glinting with pride. He knew I was a big deal, not like some people who'll be stuck in the garage their whole life. The jab hit me like a slap, and I clenched my fork so hard my knuckles turned white, the metal digging into my palm. "A big deal?" I snapped, my voice sharp, cutting through the chatter. "You mean a thief? That's my money, Malik, my house money." The room went quiet, the clinking of forks stopping abruptly. My cousins exchanged awkward glances, their smiles fading. Malik leaned back, smirking like I'd just told a bad joke. "Come on, bro. Don't be so dramatic. You'll fix a few more cars, save up again." I needed this to look the part for my interviews. "Interviews for what?" I shot back, my voice rising, my chest tight with anger. "You've never held a job for more than a month." My dad slammed his hand on the table, his face red with anger, his voice booming. "That's enough, Jamal. Malik's trying to make something of himself. He's the smart one, the one with potential. You've got your little job at the garage, you'll be fine." He paused, then added, his tone quieter but colder. "Besides, people like him get judged less harshly." He needs the edge. The words hit harder than I expected. A hint of something uglier beneath them. People like him. Did Dad mean Malik's lighter skin? The way he could pass for something other than what I was? I pushed the thought down, but it lingered, a bitter taste in my mouth. I looked at Mom, desperate for a sign she cared, but she just stared at her plate, her hands trembling slightly, her silence louder than any words. I realized then she wasn't just avoiding my gaze, she was ashamed, but not enough to speak up. That's when Tom, a white coworker from the garage who'd tagged along for dinner, spoke up. He'd been quiet all night, his eyes taking in every detail, but now he leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "That's not right, Mr. Carter. Jamal's been killing himself for that house. You can't just take it." Malik rolled his eyes, waving a hand dismissively. "Stay out of this, man. You don't get it. Family stuff." Tom's jaw tightened, his hands clenching under the table, but he didn't push. Later, as we cleared the table, he pulled me aside in the kitchen, the clatter of dishes masking our conversation. "Jamal," he whispered, slipping a note into my hand, his voice urgent, "I've seen this kind of thing before. It's not just favoritism. Meet me tomorrow." I unfolded the note, my heart pounding as I read the words. "Bank record. Check the signatures." A flicker of hope sparked in my chest, a small light in the darkness of my shame and anger. But Malik's laughter echoed from the living room, each note a reminder of what I'd lost, and the weight of their betrayal still threatened to crush me. My hands trembled as I gripped the chipped mug of black coffee, the bitter taste doing nothing to calm the storm raging inside me after another sleepless night. The coffee shop downtown buzzed with low chatter, the clink of spoons against cups mixing with the hum of an old espresso machine, but all I could hear was the echo of Malik's laugh, the image of that silver BMW parked in my parents' driveway burning behind my eyelids. I hadn't slept. Every time I tried, my mom's words, "You've always been the strong one," sliced through me, sharper than any knife. My legs felt like lead as I shuffled to the corner booth where Tom waited, his blue eyes steady under the dim light, a worn leather folder resting on the scratched table like a silent promise. "I used to work at a bank before the garage," he said, his voice low and rough, sliding the folder toward me with a careful nudge. "I've seen families pull stuff like this before, Jamal. Something about Malik's loan didn't sit right. Take a look." I flipped it open, my fingers shaking so badly the pages rustled like dry leaves, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to break free. Inside were the loan documents for Malik's BMW. $50,000 0 cents. The exact amount that had vanished from my life's savings. Every penny I'd scraped together over 10 years of late nights and skipped meals. And there, scrawled at the bottom in black ink, was my signature, except I'd never signed a thing, never given my name to this betrayal that gutted my dreams. "They forged it," I whispered, the words scraping my throat raw, tasting like ash and regret, a bitter pill I couldn't swallow. The realization hit me like a freight train, tearing through the last threads of trust I'd held for my family, leaving me hollow and exposed, my breath catching as I stared at the proof. Tom nodded, his jaw tight, his fingers tapping the table in a nervous rhythm. "There's more," he urged. "Check the loan officer's notes. Dig deeper." I scanned the page, my eyes snagging on a messy scribble in the margin. Applicant emphasized co-signer's reliability. Noted co-signer's race, black, as higher risk, but approved due to family pressure. My blood turned to ice, a cold dread seeping into my bones, chilling me to my core. They'd labeled me a risk because I'm black. Assumed I'd be the one to take the fall, while Malik coasted through with his charm and lighter skin, a privilege I'd never known. "They used me," I said, my voice cracking, my fists clenching until my nails bit into my palms, leaving crescent marks that throbbed with my anger. "The bank let them because they figured I'd just take it, because of my skin color. They didn't even see me as a person." I stood up, pacing the cramped space between the tables, my boots scuffing the tiles, my mind racing with a storm of grief and rage. I thought about the time a customer at the garage refused to let me touch his car, his voice dripping with disdain as he said, "I don't trust your kind with my engine. his sneer cutting deeper than I'd admitted back then. I'd kept my head down, fixed the car anyway, but now it all came flooding back. The whispers at work, the way I'd had to prove myself twice as hard, the quiet slights that piled up over years. And now this, a bank deciding I was a risk. My own family letting it happen, using my race against me. My chest tightened, the grief swelling until it felt like I might shatter, tears stinging my eyes but refusing to fall, the weight of it all pressing down like a physical force. Tom's hand landed on my shoulder, his grip warm and steady, pulling me back from the edge. "You don't have to take it, Jamal," he said, his voice firm, grounding me like an anchor in a storm. "We can fight this. I know someone, a woman I worked with at the bank. She's tough and won't let this slide." That spark of support ignited a fire in me, burning through the grief and sparking a fierce determination to take a stand. I wasn't just a punching bag for their biases. I could fight back, not just for me, but for the kids at the garage who watched me work, the ones who'd faced the same battles I had. I sank back into the booth, my breath steadying, my hands loosening their grip on the mug. "Tell me about her," I said, my voice steadier now, a flicker of hope taking root in my chest. "I need to know she's got my back." Tom leaned in, his eyes lighting up, a rare smile breaking through his usual seriousness. "Her name's Evelyn Harper. She's a civil rights lawyer now, and she's taken on cases like this. Families using the system, banks turning a blind eye. She's fierce, Jamal. I saw her once take down a manager who tried to cover up a similar mess. Didn't back down until justice was served. She'll fight for you." I nodded, picturing a woman with fire in her veins, my mind racing with possibilities. "When can we meet her?" I asked, my hope growing like a seedling pushing through cracked earth. "Tomorrow," Tom said. "I'll call her tonight. She'll want to see the documents herself, go over every detail." We sat there, the folder between us, the hum of the coffee shop fading into the background, and I thought about the kids at the garage, their wide eyes watching me fix engines, wondering if this fight could light a path for them too, a way to stand tall against the odds that had always stacked against me. My voice carried a new strength as I stood in the center of my parents' living room that evening, the folder's edges worn from my grip, its weight a reminder of the battle I was ready to wage. Melik had strolled in late, his designer jacket catching the porch light, the BMW parked outside like a taunt, its chrome glinting with arrogance under the dim street lamp. My parents sat on the couch, their faces a mix of guilt and defiance, the air thick with tension, heavy with the unspoken years of imbalance between us. Tom stood at my side, his quiet presence a steady support, the folder a weapon in my hands, its pages crinkling as I held it tight. "Malik," I began, my tone firm, laced with a steel I'd found in myself. "You forged my signature to get that car. You drained my account, my house fund, and didn't even blink." Malik scoffed, crossing his arms, his smirk sharp as ever, his eyes glinting with defiance. "You can't prove that. It's a family account. We all have access. Deal with it." My dad nodded, his jaw tight, his voice gruff and dismissive. "Avi's right, Jamal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Let it go." The door creaked open, and in stepped Miss Evelyn Harper, her tall frame commanding the room, her gray-streaked hair pulled back tight, her eyes blazing with purpose, a briefcase swinging at her side with a quiet authority. "I'm not just a bank manager," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I'm a civil rights lawyer, and what I see here isn't just fraud, it's racial profiling. A pattern I've fought against for years in this broken system." My parents' faces paled, the color draining like water from a cracked glass, Malik's smirk vanishing as he froze, his hands dropping to his sides, his confidence crumbling under her gaze. Miss Harper lifted the loan documents, her finger tapping the damning note, her voice steady and strong. "This bank labeled Jamal a higher risk because of his race, yet approved the loan because Malik exploited that bias, knowing Jamal would be the one to take the fall. That's illegal, and I've seen it too many times in this town, good people crushed by prejudice." She turned to me, her gaze fierce, a spark of recognition in her eyes. "I've already got the bank's legal team on the phone. We're suing for discrimination and fraud. Malik's facing felony charges, forgery, theft, the works. We'll make the bank answer for this too. Her voice softened, a note of understanding weaving through. "I've watched men like you get hurt by this system, Jamal. We're going to break it back." The room erupted like a thunderclap. Malik leapt up, his voice cracking with panic, his face flushed with desperation. "You can't do this! It was just a car, let it go, man!" My mom's tears spilled over, her hands twisting her cardigan into knots, her voice breaking with a plea. "Jamal, please, don't destroy your brother. He's still your blood. Think of the family." My dad's face hardened, his fists clenching on his knees, but his eyes dropped to the floor, his hands fidgeting in his lap, shame etching new lines into his weathered face, a rare crack in his usual stubbornness that I'd never seen before. I stepped forward, my voice rising with a strength I'd never felt before, fueled by years of silence. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the money. It's about what you did to me. You let Malik use my race against me, let the bank treat me like I'm nothing because of my skin. I'm done being your doormat." Miss Harper nodded, her expression approving, pulling out a notepad from her briefcase with a click. "We'll need your statement, Jamal, and any records you have, bank statements, work logs, anything that shows your sacrifice. This case is solid, and we'll build it brick by brick." Tom squeezed my shoulder, a silent encouragement, his eyes meeting mine with a nod of solidarity. Malik sank back into his chair, his bravado gone, his hands trembling as he stared at the floor, defeated. Mom's sobs grew louder, but I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes, a realization of the pain she'd ignored, her hands pausing mid-twist. The disillusionment settled in, a bitter understanding that my family had never truly seen me, their favoritism a mirror to the world's prejudice, but it was overshadowed by a fierce vindication, a belief that I could reclaim my future, and maybe even show the kids at the garage how to rise above the odds stacked against them. 2 weeks had dragged on since that fiery family meeting, each day a grind to hold on to hope, when my lawyer's phone buzzed with the call I'd been clinging to. The bank had settled. They'd agreed to restore my $50,000, 0 cents, the lifeline of my stolen house fund, and tacked on another $10, 0 cents for the discrimination their racist profiling had let fester, a wound I'd carried too long. I sat in my beat-up pickup truck outside the bank, the engine ticking as it cooled, the cold metal of the steering wheel grounding me as I stared at the updated balance on my phone, the numbers glowing like a lifeline I'd clawed back from the abyss. That same day, the police swooped in, arresting Malik for fraud, his silver BMW repossessed right in front of my parents' house. I stood in their driveway, the gravel crunching under my worn boots, watching the tow truck's winch groan as it hooked onto that gleaming car, its chrome no longer a taunt but a fading symbol of his arrogance. Malik screamed at the officers, his voice raw with desperation. "This is my car, you can't take it!" But they didn't flinch, dragging it away as he kicked at the ground, his designer jacket flapping, a tear splitting the sleeve as he stumbled. My parents lingered on the porch, their faces crumpled with shame, eyes darting away from mine, the silence between us thicker than the cold Ohio air, broken only by the distant hum of the tow truck's engine fading into the night. That evening, they showed up at my cramped apartment, the one I'd rented for years while saving every time. Their footsteps hesitant on the creaky stairs outside my door, each step a reluctant echo of their guilt. My dad's voice trembled, a shadow of his usual gruffness, as he started, "Jamal, we're sorry. We didn't realize how much we hurt you." My mom wiped her tears with a crumpled tissue, her hands shaking as she clutched it, her voice breaking with a confession that cut deeper than I'd expected. "We thought Malik needed more help because people always judged him less harshly. He's lighter-skinned, Jamal. We thought he had a better shot at making it." The words hit me like a sledgehammer, a raw truth I'd sensed in their favoritism but never heard so plain, stirring a memory of a boss years ago who'd pass me over for a raise, muttering, "Clients trust the lighter faces more," a sting I'd buried. They'd pick Malik not just because they spoiled him, but because of internalized racism, believing his lighter skin gave him an edge I'd never have in their eyes, or this unforgiving town. I steadied myself against the kitchen counter, my voice firm with the steel I'd forged through this ordeal. "You didn't just hurt me. You stole from me. You let him use my race against me. I'm done being your scapegoat." I handed them a letter from my lawyer, a restraining order, its white paper crisp against their trembling fingers, the ink a bold line of my resolve. "Stay away from me," I said, closing the door with a quiet click that rang like a final note, leaving me alone with the hum of my fridge and a flood of relief washing over me, softening into a deep gratitude laced with closure, a chapter sealed with the strength I'd found in myself and the allies who'd stood by me. A month later, I stood in the empty living room of my new house, a modest 2-bedroom in Ohio, with a small garage out back where I could tinker with cars on weekends, the faint smell of fresh paint mixing with the dust of new beginnings. The keys dangled in my hand, cool metal against my calloused palm, and I felt a burden ease from my chest, a lightness I hadn't known since those dark nights after the theft. The creak of the floorboards under my boots, a new rhythm of freedom. I'd won. Not just my money, but my dignity. A prize harder earned than any paycheck from the garage. A victory over the years I'd spent proving my worth. Malik's trial had wrapped up with a 3-year sentence, his charm crumbling under Miss Harper's evidence. The courtroom a stark contrast to his swagger, his shouts of protest silenced by the judge's gavel. My parents, I learned through a cousin, had started attending community workshops on racism, their footsteps echoing in rooms where they tried to unlearn the biases that had torn us apart, their silence now a different kind of weight I no longer carried. But my victory wasn't their punishment. It was my freedom, a canvas to paint a life where my worth wasn't measured by their approval or the bank's assumptions. I walked to the window, picturing the garden I'd plant out front with rows of tomatoes and marigolds, the laughter that might fill these walls one day, with friends or a family of my own. And that gratitude deepened, a quiet joy settling in, as I traced the grain of the wooden floor with my boot, feeling the closure of a battle hard fought and won. 2 years had slipped by like oil through my fingers, and my house had grown into more than just a home. It was a sanctuary not just for me, but for my whole community. The garage a hub of life, with the clatter of tools and the scent of grease thick in the air, the walls alive with chatter. I'd started hosting weekly meetings for local kids, teaching them how to change oil or fix a brake line, my hands guiding theirs as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the lessons stretching late into the evening with the sound of laughter and metal clanging. One Saturday, after the others had pedaled off on their repaired bikes, a shy 14-year-old named DeAndre lingered, his crooked smile catching the light as he fiddled with a rusted chain, his sneakers scuffing the concrete, leaving faint marks. "Mr. Jamal?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the garage fan. "Did you really take on a bank and win?" I nodded, kneeling down to his level, the concrete cold under my knees, and told him my story, how I'd lost everything to my brother's greed, how I'd fought back with Tom and Ms. Harper, how I'd turned betrayal into something bigger than myself. His eyes lit up, a spark of hope I recognized from my own past, and he said, "I want to be like you one day," his small hand gripping the wrench I'd handed him, his fingers trembling with ambition. I ruffled his hair, a lump forming in my throat, the weight of his words sinking in, a reflection of the man I'd become through this struggle. A mentor, where I'd once been just a victim. My story had spread beyond my street, rippling through Ohio like a wave, inspiring others to confront racism in their own lives, to speak up where they'd once stayed silent, their voices joining mine in a chorus of change that echoed in community halls and coffee shops. A local school invited me to speak at their assembly, and I stood on that stage, the microphone trembling in my hand, the wooden podium scratched from years of use, its edges worn smooth, looking out at a sea of young faces, black, white, Latino, Asian, watching me with wide eyes, their anticipation a palpable force. I shared it all, the bank's profiling, my family's betrayal, the system that tried to break me, and how I'd rebuilt, stronger, my voice steadying as I went, the words flowing like oil from a well. A girl in the front row raised her hand, her braids swinging as she asked, How did you keep going when it hurt so bad?" I paused, thinking of the nights I'd cried alone in my apartment, the days I'd wanted to quit but pushed on, the strength I'd found in my own reflection, and answered, "Because I knew my worth, even when they didn't," my voice cracking with the memory of that growth. The room erupted in applause and I felt a swell of fulfillment, a purpose I'd never dreamed of when I was just a mechanic chasing a house. The sound of their clapping a rhythm to my new life, a testament to how far I'd come from the man who'd stood in that driveway, watching his dreams vanish. Racism doesn't just come from strangers. It can live in your own family, in the systems around you, in the quiet assumptions that shape your days, a shadow I'd learned to face and overcome. But so can resilience. I rebuilt my life, brick by brick, and you can too. Have you ever faced unfair treatment? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear it. And if this story moved you, hit that like button, leave a comment and subscribe for more. That night, back in my garage, I looked at the kids' drawings, taped to the wall, a stick figure version of me holding a wrench, labeled Hero in wobbly crayon, and felt a legacy taking root, a promise that my fight would mean something for DeAndre and the generations to come, the tools gleaming under the lights like a testament to my journey, the hum of the fan a quiet companion to my thoughts of a future built on justice.